Welcome to TomBecka.com, where everyone's exceptional and everyone has a story to tell. And this story was recorded, recorded 2 years ago. Jim Fagan was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer back in about 2009, I believe it was. Around 2009, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and fought a good hard battle for about 4 years or so. He recently passed away. But I recorded this about 2 years ago, back in 2011, about the fall of 2011. I recorded this because Jim had an incredible attitude towards this situation. There was no pity party. There was no feeling sorry for himself. There was no sadness. It was all about, his situation, having a positive attitude and working to fight it. It's an inspirational interview with a man that I'm proud to have said was my friend and a man that fought a good fight. And maybe it brings a little bit of hope or inspiration to you, or maybe it's just interesting to get into the mindset of a person who knows the end is upon him and that the end is near. Although at the time of this interview, I don't know that we knew that he'd still be around for another 2 years or so. So with nothing but respect and praise for a great guy and a brave man, here's my interview with Jim Fagan.
I didn't have a choice in getting cancer, but I have a choice in how I deal with it. And I just had a double dose of chemotherapy again yesterday. And I said, last night, I was starting to get in a bad mood. And because chemotherapy kind of, it messes with you. And but then I said, no, I don't want to. And I have to remind myself not to get angry, not to feel sorry for myself, that it's better for me to seek to console rather than be consoled. So,
but yeah, okay, and that looks good on a Hallmark card. Okay, and I agree with you philosophically.
Yeah,
I thoroughly agree with you. But the reality is, if I'm battling that cancer and I've just gone through a double dose of chemo, to just put on a happy face and say, well, it could be worse. That's got to be tough to do.
It is, and it could be worse. And every time I look at young people, I'm old, and I say, I can handle it. And
well, you're not old. How old are you? 60?
66 this month.
Oh, 66. Okay, you're 66.
Yeah, Social Security.
Yeah, but you don't look 66. Even going through the chemo right now, you still don't look 66.
Well, I still go out and rake leaves. I go out and run every morning. I go out and lift weights every night. I can't lift like I used to. But they told me that being in good shape was what helped through the initial bout of pancreatic cancer, which, you don't know what you have, but it just makes you sicker than a dog, and pain, terrible amount of pain. And I've got more pain pills, and some nights that the pain pills wouldn't even work. And so morphine didn't do any good. And I went all the way up to Dilaudid.
Morphine wouldn't work?
And I would get up to Dilaudid, and then sometimes the pills wouldn't work. And that's one step below heroin. And then I would have to go down to the medical center in the middle of the night and get an IV. And that's all that would work. And that's when it was at its worst. And my doctor, who is, I think, one of the world's great surgeons, who works at UNMC, Dr. Jean Botha from South Africa, tremendous sense of humor, and he knew I have a sense of humor. And one night, I'm in the hospital, and he told me, he said, Jim, we're killing you, because I was just losing weight. And he says, we don't have ideal conditions, but he says, we've got to operate on you. So they did the thing called the Whipple procedure. And I think that's one thing Steve Jobs didn't do. He didn't do... I don't think he did I don't follow all this stuff real carefully. He may have had the Whipple, but I think he waited too long.
Yeah, and he also had another type of cancer, I think, than what you have.
It was similar, but different. And
a better survival rate for pancreatic cancer than what you have. Let's start from the beginning here, because about 2.5 years ago or so, you weren't feeling well.
Oh, yeah, I was getting real sick. I tried to walk it off. I'd go out on my morning runs, and I'd be running a couple of miles, and I'd get so sick and in such pain, and I would try to walk it off. Well, one morning, my wife and I were having breakfast out, and I took her to McDonald's. You see what kind of a big spender I am.
Oh, yeah, you're Mr. Romance right there, right, honey? Breakfast at McDonald's.
And the sweat is just rolling off of me and is pooling on the table. And I told her, I said, geez, this is really hot coffee. Well, she thought I was having a heart attack. I said, nah, I don't think so. But we went to the emergency room, and they found out real quickly through a blood test that I had pancreatitis. And pancreatitis is often brought on by excessive alcohol use. Well, I drink, but not to excess. And I told the doctors, I said, I'm not an alcoholic. Well, it still might be.
That's the first thing. Every alcoholic denies it, right? So you're in denial.
Yeah. And so then they told me to eat some special stuff. And they told me then, they say, hey, this is very serious. And I said, geez, I know a little bit about the pancreas, but not much. And I said, I'm not that concerned about it. Well, you have to be. And they told me what to eat, and I very disciplined, and I ate what they told me to eat. But I would still wind up in and out of the hospital in terrible pain. I mean, pancreatitis is very, very painful. And it's hard to describe, but it's like when you eat something, you don't digest it, and it just hangs out in there. It was like a brick, and every time you move, it's like a brick bouncing in your stomach. And that's about as close as I can come to it. And finally, after 3 months, they had not discovered what I had. It's a very hard thing to discover. So I got a second opinion. My first doctors then dropped me because I got a second opinion. Well, it's a good thing I got a second opinion because I went to UNMC, and in 3 weeks, they found out what I had. And I was going on your show that night. It was Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I remember that.
Christmas Eve of 2009, I think.
It was in the middle of the healthcare debate. I mean, because Ben Nelson, who had a critical part of the healthcare debate, you're talking all about healthcare. At the time, you're going in for tests, and you had just found out right before I saw you that you had pancreatic cancer. But as I recall, you hadn't even told your wife yet.
No,
so
I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't tell Senator Nelson. Didn't tell you. You're a good friend of mine. Didn't tell my wife. I figured I had to learn I was going to deal with it before I could tell anybody else. And so he went on the show. He did the show that night. And then the next day, Christmas Day, I told my wife.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. And I said, it's not so bad. I said, there's a tumor on my pancreas. And I said, now that at least they know what it is, they can operate on it. And it turned out there were a lot of tumors on it. And then to get to because the pancreas, it's about a 6-inch long organ, but it's so hidden inside you that they can't see it or anything. So I underwent a number of surgical procedures that they would say, oh, this won't bother you. God, it would knock me on my butt. And even the way you get chemotherapy, it's through a port that they install in your chest, and they drip it in over a period of hours. They stick a huge needle in there, and then it just drips into your chest. And that was another surgical procedure.
But before we get to all of that, I want to go back to the day you found out you had pancreatic cancer. Yeah. I mean, you've been going in pancreatitis. Maybe it's an ulcer. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. Nobody's really telling you anything. And then the doctor comes in and sits down and says, not only do you have cancer, you've got a form of cancer with a very high mortality rate. Is there any way to describe what that felt like?
It's like you say, that my outlook on life, and it's one that would be difficult to have, but during dark periods of all my life, I've tended to smile as opposed to think about myself. And I even remember when he told me that Christmas Eve, they called me as a courtesy call saying, your tests are in, and it was a guy with an Indian accent. And it was not my regular doctor, but it was just a courtesy call. And he said, just, your tests are in, and we will have the results. And just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas and everything. And I knew he was holding something back. I've been a reporter for far too long. So I started to ask him questions. It's my own fault. And I broke him down. And on the phone, I remember how he finally said it. He said, Mr. Fagan, you have a tumor. And I paused for a second. I said, well, that's not all bad. At least you can operate on it. At least now you know what it is. So, I mean, immediately saw the good. And it just must be the way I'm wired. So I've dealt with it that way.
Were they going to wait till after Christmas to tell you then? We're just calling you to tell you we have the test, but we're not going to tell you what the results are? I mean, what?
They wanted to give me as best a Christmas as I could have, even though I was in very ill health. I was on a thing called TPN, which they feed you all liquids, and you're hooked up to it 12 hours a day. And then 12 hours a day I would go do what I wanted to do, and the other 12 hours a day had this drain into me, and it was awful. And I couldn't eat anything, couldn't drink anything. Think of that. And I'll take you ahead then finally to when I after had the operation, and they told me to eat. I couldn't eat because I had gone 4 months without eating. And my doctor told me, he says, you can't get out of the hospital till you're putting in 2,000 calories a day. And he said, eat anything you want. So I went out and I think I got a Big Mac, and I ate it and promptly threw it up. And he thought that was the funniest thing in the world, my doctor. He's laughing. But he knew I would laugh because, I would have a dozen surgeons come in, and they're all looking at me, and their brows are furrowed, and they're wringing their hands. And I would look at them, and I'd say, are all of you here for me? And I'm really sick, and I don't feel good. I feel awful. And they said, yes. They'd nod their heads, and I'd say, God, I love being the center of attention. And I would make them laugh. But it's just the way I've dealt with things. I know not everybody does deal with it that way. And I've talked with a lot of cancer patients, some of whom have died after I talked with them. I hope I didn't have anything to do with that.
Well, I've talked to you, and I can understand why they'd want to.
But I would try to cheer them up, and I would try to say, there's a little good in everything you have here. Even on my sickest days now, when I get chemotherapy, that's when I feel sick now. And I just had a dose yesterday, a double dose. I'll pull up next to somebody in the car, and I'll look at them in the car, and I'll say, I'll bet he doesn't take chemotherapy. I'll bet if there was a fiery collision right now, it would bother him. Wouldn't even bother me. I do things like that because I know every day I live with the threat that this could, I could die.
Is that, we're all going to die, okay? We're all going to die, but I'm not facing it every day.
Yeah.
Every morning you wake up and you know you got this cancer, that it's returned. We'll get to it returning in a little bit. That it's returned, and you know that you're doing the chemo and everything, that your days are numbered. Or do you know that your days are numbered? Or is your optimistic attitude just saying, I'm going to beat this?
No, I know they're numbered. But I say each day I'm going to live like it's my last. And it isn't like you see in the movies, like The Bucket List. I wouldn't even watch that movie. When I first saw it, my two favorite actors, Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson, I was thinking, oh, man, it's going to be a great movie. I was watching TV one night, and I saw what it was. Two cancer patients, and I happen to have a black friend who has cancer, too, and whose prognosis is not all that good. So, I really felt close to this. And I saw what it was, their bucket list. It was things they wanted to do before they kicked the bucket, and it was travel and all this stuff. And I told my wife, I said, I don't really want to watch this. And I said, my bucket list is just to feel good every day. And I said, when I get up in the morning and I feel a stomachache, I said, does that mean it's really returned and I'm going to be miserable like I was and be dead in a couple of weeks? I don't know. But I will live this day like it's my last. And that's why I go to work. I do normal things. I try to be normal.
It's like the old joke, live every day like it's your last, and one day you'll be right.
Yeah, it will.
Is that so? When you look at the good side, is that what good has come from this? Then that you've maybe changed your attitude towards, like you said, live every day like it's your last. That maybe 2-3 years ago you wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I tend not to get upset about a lot of things that used to upset me. Maybe I wouldn't be as good a reporter today as I was then because I would get upset about things. And I knew I was going to, if I was in a contentious interview like you would be in, I knew I was going to win that interview because I knew I was going to. Now it's not as important to me. I'll watch. I've been a person who's not been ever I've always felt sorry for people who are in bad shape, but that St. Jude's commercial for St. Jude's Hospital, Children's Hospital, it's on TV now. I can't watch it without crying. I never cried on TV. So it's on, and my wife says, well, I'll turn it off. And I said, no, I've got to get through this so I don't cry when I see something like that. And it's because I saw but then I like to remember the children who have this. Not that they have this, but I remember going to the UNMC in the middle of the night to get a pain treatment. I'd see little kids down there carrying the same bag of TPN feeding them that I have. And I even asked a nurse one night, I said, does that little kid have what I have? She said, yes. I said, he's 5 years old. He's going through this. He's 5. I was in my 60s. Then I would say, what must his parents be going through? Look at their children wanting to help them, and there's nothing they can do. And I think it's tougher to watch someone you love suffer than it is to be the one suffering.
Well, let's talk about that, because you've got a wife, you've got kids.
Yep.
How are they handling all of this?
Very well, because I told them that to me, I'm not a real religious person, but I do have a strong faith, and I'm not worried about the future. Whatever it holds, it will hold. It's beyond my control. And hopefully I've been a good enough person that I will have a reward of some kind in store, but you never know. But then I also told them it was very important to me to will my body to medical science, because I underwent 8.5-hour operation. I've undergone 2 years of chemotherapy that just ravages your body. I mean, it's designed to kill bad cells, but it kills good cells. Some days I can cramp up from the chemotherapy. I can't open my hands. Things like that will happen. But I deal with it to the point where I laugh at it. Now I said, here it comes again. I better put my coffee down because I can't hold it now. But my kids, the first Thanksgiving we went through, we didn't know what I had. They knew I was sick and I can't eat. No one wanted to eat in front of me. And I said, please do, eat in front of me. I said, I live vicariously through others. And so then they did. I've willed my body to medical science. They understood it. I had them sign a paper so that there wouldn't be somebody at the last minute would say, no, we don't want it. We don't want him cut up or anything. I said, you know how important this is to me? If some young scientist, and it's at UNMC, which has saved my life for 2.5 years, if some young scientist there could discover a cure or an early marker for this disease that would prevent somebody else or my own children, God forbid, from getting this disease, how good that would make me feel. And then I also told them, if anybody gets in the way of this, I'll haunt you. I think it'd be kind of fun to.
It would be fun to haunt,
It would.
Just haunt him for the principal anyway. Just haunt him for giggles. I mean, just do that anyway. Oh, hey, I know you let the body go to science, but I'm going to haunt you anyway. Let's talk a little bit about this. Okay, so you mentioned UNMC saved your life for 2.5 years because you had the Whipple procedure, and then you were thought to be cancer-free. I mean, you were cancer-free. At least they couldn't detect it. They couldn't find any. And then about, 5-6 months ago or so, you go in for your regular checkup, your regular routine checkup, and
they spotted a common place for pancreatic cancer to metastasize is into your lungs or your lymph nodes. So they pay particular attention there, and I get CAT scans. I've had 20 CAT scans so far. The average survivor of Hiroshima, the first atomic bomb, had the equivalent of radiation from 2 CAT scans. I've had 20. I've asked my oncologist, I said, is there a problem here? She says, no, you die of old age first. And she said, we have to know what's happening. Well, they spot these things in my lungs. I have no symptoms. I'm not coughing. I'm not short of breath. But they spot something in my lungs that look like little tiny minuscule nodules growing. And she wanted to do a biopsy to make sure they were cancerous. Well, a biopsy of the lung is not like a biopsy of a mole on your hand or something. They make like a big incision, go into your lungs. Your lungs can collapse.
Yeah.
They shift your entire rib cage, so it makes you feel like when you wake up, like every rib in your body's been broken. And if you ever had a broken rib, you know how painful that is. You can't even breathe. So it's like 3 days in the hospital and 2 weeks recovery. So I said, wait a minute. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to tear my body down any more than it's been torn down. I'm trying to build it back up. How sure are you that it's cancerous? She said 90%, and she's very good. She was recruited from the National Institute of Health to come here to UNMC, and she's really sharp, and I like her very well. Dr. Jean Grem. Note, I've never made a joke about Dr. Grem, but she...
Until now.
Yeah, until now. And we do it on the TomBecka podcast here. And she may listen because she has a wide range of interests. But so I said, well, can you give me some more chemotherapy? There I am asking for chemotherapy. She said, yeah. They could have done radiation, but radiation, they tried to limit it to one little area. The areas of the pancreas, it's such a big area that the radiation would have probably killed me. So they just said, we'll just stick with the chemo. So then they took. Then I went back 3 months later for another CAT scan, and the growth of those little nodules. Here's the good news: had stopped. They had stopped growing, and they're still minuscule. But then I had some others, some new ones that were growing. So they said, let's add a second cocktail. That's what they call this. Makes you want to come down, doesn't it? Having double cocktails.
I'll stick with scotch.
But so they said, so we'll give you a double cocktail. And that's what I'm on now. It's a double cocktail, and it takes 4 to 5 hours just for that, and then all the preparation and everything every Monday. Then they give me a week off to recover, and I take all kinds of nausea pills. I have Nebraska's version of medical marijuana. It's called Marinol. It's for 30 capsules is $1,400. Fortunately, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. I paid $40. But
okay, now you see right there. Now this is okay. You're taking Marinol. You say $1,400. Get you a bag of pot for $100.
I know.
Why don't you just go with pot? I mean, in other words,
it's not legal in this state. And you and I have a mutual friend who has said he would bring me some. And I said, because I
have no idea who you're talking about. For the record, hey, look, you may be dying. I'm going to be around a while. Keep me out of this, okay?
Yeah, you don't want to be in jail. But no, he said, I said, well, I don't want to smoke it. And he said, I'll bake it in a brownie. And it would help ease the nausea. Because that's, with chemotherapy, the nausea is the worst thing. And in pain. And
does the Marinol help?
I haven't taken that much of it. I don't think it does that much. It was like they told me for sure morphine would help. And I've gone every stage of narcotic up to there. Morphine didn't help before I had my operation. And all that helped was Dilaudid, which was called the drugstore heroin of the 80s. They had a lot of drugstore break-ins all over the country back then, people going after Dilaudid. I mean, it's like one step under heroin.
Right.
And that's all that worked for me. And sometimes the pills wouldn't work. That's how painful it was. Then when I had the Whipple procedure, I knew right away I was better. And the Whipple is an 8.5-hour operation. And when I went in, I didn't know that I was going to come back. My whole family was there, and I said, we're giving it a chance, and I'm in good hands. And none of us knew if I was coming back. I did, and I woke up, 8.5-hour operation. They took out my spleen, my gallbladder, my pancreas, half my duodenum, which I think is the whole stomach thing, reconfigured it. Food runs through me like it runs through a goose.
Yeah.
I can't gain any weight. It's like you have one of those stomach staples or something. I can't gain any weight. And that's fine with me. That's a good thing. Because people my age, a lot of time you worry about gaining weight.
Why did you decide to go through all this again? In other words, my dad had colorectal cancer. And he told me, he said that, look, if it comes back, I'm not going through that again. Okay? It was like, for him, it was like the chemo and everything. He said, I'm not messing with that anymore. So if it comes back, that's it. You, on the other hand, said, okay, more chemo, let's do it. Why? I mean, you say you have no bucket list. It doesn't sound like you've got all these things you want to accomplish in life, the things that you wish you ever done. I don't think in the times that we've talked, I don't think you have any major regrets. Why put yourself through all of this right now? The nausea and everything else with the chemo. Not that I'm trying to get rid of you or anything, but yeah,
it's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question, and it's because I've come to find out that I'm tough enough to put up with chemotherapy, and it doesn't really bother me that much, like other things would bother me. And I've had friends who've lost an arm and things like this, and they have to learn to live with it. I said, I can learn to live with that. Now, I will not go to other extremes. It's like I wouldn't do the lung biopsy. I'm not going to do things like that. The Whipple was a last chance thing. It was I was either going to die or I was going to have that operation. I said, well, let's give it a try.
You mentioned Steve Jobs. You can also talk about Patrick Swayze, died of pancreatic cancer.
About the same time I got mine.
Yeah.
Michael Landon, which one guy went through the Johnny Carson show, and they were taking all of these unusual therapies. Michael Landon admitted on the Johnny Carson show one night he was taking coffee enemas. And then a lot of these guys, they'll go to other countries, and they'll get these exotic treatments. Well, what it does is, I think with Steve Jobs, it might have shortened his life. He could afford it, but then he didn't do some of the things that he should have done.
How do you feel, though, when Steve Jobs dies of pancreatic cancer, and you're battling pancreatic cancer? How does that make you feel?
You look for it, and there are a number of people I pray for every day, and that I remember every day. You're one of them. You're a guy you've always asked me, and genuinely so. Is there anything I can do? And you meant it. You came to see me in the hospital when I was in delusions, when I thought everybody was after me.
I love that. Tell that story. Tell that story.
Oh, man. Anyway, you've always made me laugh on the radio. I said, keep me laughing. I said, let me have fun. That's what I want to do. I was in the hospital, and they gave me, after that Whipple procedure, which is really a brutal operation, and they gave me something that I had a terrible reaction to, and I started feeling extreme paranoia, thinking everybody was after me and my money, like I've got a lot of money. I even thought my wife was after me. In my mind, I didn't even know where I was. They would ask me where I am, and I would say, off at Air Force Base. And I'd say it like that, and I'd look at them, and I'd tell these nurses, don't get too close. And they were afraid of me. I couldn't remember their names or anything like that. Well, my wife, I said, bring me a toothbrush. And she probably did bring me a toothbrush. But in my mind, she didn't. And I said, and I've even asked our son to bring me a toothbrush. And now you're turning him against me. And everybody figured it was against me. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of all this delusion, which went on for several days, I look over and here's TomBecka standing there with a bouquet of flowers.
I brought this little plant, hey, get well soon, and you think I'm out to kill you and take all your money.
Well, first off, I looked, and I said, is that TomBecka? And I looked, and I said, that's Tom. That's Tom. And then I got thinking, and in my warped mind, I said, Tom wouldn't be out to get me. Tom never would. So
your wife would.
Yeah, my
wife would. But me, hey.
So I put you and Ben Nelson in the same category. I had my cell phone, which has a lot of numbers in it, and in the middle of the night, one night when I thought they were out to get me, 3 o'clock in the morning, I speed dialed Ben Nelson on the phone to tell him, look out, they're out to get me, I need some help. And he answered the phone. And then he immediately called his chief of staff, who called my wife and said, what's the matter with Jim? And she said, Jim's out of his mind. We hope he pops back.
You earlier you said that you weren't necessarily a religious man.
Yeah.
However, we hear all these stories all the time. Somebody, I'm not religious, but all of a sudden you're sick. Oh, dear God, please,
Yeah.
Have you become more religious through this? Have you become more conscientious of a higher power or a God?
No foxhole conversion here. I've always been a Christian. Always believed in Jesus Christ. Still do. And my prayers go out to God, to Jesus Christ, and to St. Peregrine, patron saint of cancer patients. And I'm not even a Catholic. But I have a lot.
But you're hedging your bets.
I am. I have a lot of people praying for me. I have one guy in Colorado who said he's never lost one yet. He prays for me. I don't even know who it is. But I have these little prayer circles in all kinds of churches and synagogues. I love it. But I have not become any more religious, but I am firmly convinced that there's something better beyond this life.
What do you think it is?
You know, sometimes I'll say, I'm going to go fly. And to me, that's what it is, just a release of all the pain and all the burdens and the worries and everything else, and I'm just going to go fly. And I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is. And I haven't even thought what it's going to be like.
I've heard a lot of people talking about Steve Jobs' last words.
I know.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I would think that has a lot more meaning to you, knowing what you know about your condition. I mean, I could die before you, but I don't know that. I mean, when you hear that, just that, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. What does that mean to you?
I was thinking, and then I always think, it's like with email. The words are terribly sterile, and I'm hearing those read and interpreted by somebody on the radio. Oh, wow, oh, wow. Sounds good. But what if he was actually said it like this? Oh, wow, oh, wow. Same words, different meaning.
Yeah.
And no, but I took it, the optimist that I am, I took it like he saw what's ahead of him. And there are books out and all this stuff. I resist reading those. I've resisted getting involved in any pancreatic cancer things. I said I'm not going to pit one cancer against another. I did go speak at Pancreatic Survivors this year when they thought I was cancer-free, and then it's back in the lungs. And I'm hoping it'll all get rid of it from the lungs. I was told back in June when they first saw it in appearing in the lungs that if I did nothing, I might have 8 months to live. Well, that's June, 5 months. I still feel pretty good. And
do you want to know that? In other words, I mean, with your optimistic attitude as it is, I mean, the way that you look at life, if they tell you, I mean, even if they say, okay, with chemo, you've got an additional 6 months, 8 months, a year. Do you want to know that? Does that give you comfort, or do you?
No, I don't. But given the opportunity to ask, I was going to ask. Because then it's almost like you have a fatalistic attitude. I got 8 months to live. I'm at 7. Oh, I better start feeling sick here any day soon. Well, I really don't want to feel. I've gotten used to feeling not normal, but I'm still comfortable. Like I'm drinking a Coke here with you right now, and it's good.
Yeah, because actually, before we started, we sat down, and you felt because of your chemo, you needed some sort of a sugar fix because
it was diabetes. This thing gave when they wanted to leave just a little bit of the pancreas, and they couldn't. There were too many tumors on it, so they took the whole pancreas, made me diabetic. So in addition to having cancer and chemotherapy, missing half my internal organs, being the age of 66, I'm also diabetic, and I have to deal with. And I can't digest my food. I take an enzyme to help digest my food. Pancreas does that for you. And pancreas also regulates your blood sugar. And your blood sugar, if it's too high, you may not know it because it doesn't have that big of an impact. But over years, it can cause kidney failure, or it can cause a loss of toes or legs or things like that. So you watch it. You watch it for that. But if it gets too low, you can go into a coma and it can kill you. And you can feel when it's getting too low. That's one thing. I don't even need to test my sugar when in the chemotherapy messes with the sugar levels. So I got to your place and I said, I could just feel it coming on. And then I'm going to have a Rick Perry moment. Because in addition to making you feel crappy, you will lose track of your thoughts. And I would be sitting, you'd ask me a question, and I know I'd go, oops. So you got me a Coke, and I'm doing just great.
How did it feel to be told you have cancer? I don't remember. Yeah.
That's right. Oops.
I asked you a question that David Letterman asked Warren Zevon when Warren Zevon was on his show, and Warren had been told, yeah, your days are numbered. And that Letterman asked a question that I thought was fascinating. And I'd like to get your response on this. What do you know now in your current state that I don't know in mine?
We all know there's an end to life, but I can probably feel mine a little closer. And it makes me laugh at things even more than I ever did before. Just because I know it's not going to be important if I don't get the lawn mowed. Just there's certain things that used to be important to me. If I don't get them done now, it's not important. It really isn't.
Your neighbors might not feel the same way, though. You realize that?
I'll come back and haunt them, too.
There's Fagan. Fagan's using that cancer excuse again to make his yard look like crap.
My neighbors were so good. They when I was sick, they would come over and shovel my driveway and the walk. And my wife's employment got together, and they got a summer's worth of lawn mowing for her. So everybody was so nice. And I wanted to get back and mow the lawn. Little things like that I look forward to being able to do. And I still do. And even more so now. And the fact that I can do them. It's like my bucket list is to be able to continue to mow the lawn. Think of that. When you're a little kid and your father wants you to go mow the lawn. I don't want to mow the lawn. Now I do.
So you enjoy things like that now just because it shows you're still alive that you can do it.
Yep. It's, the what is it, the Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. Well, I've lived in interesting times. I would just as soon live in boring times. Past 2.5 years have been the most interesting 2.5 years of my life. But I'd just soon everything be nice and boring.
Things were okay back then, huh?
Yeah, that's it. But and it's not a show, and I don't just put it on. And it's like I say, I didn't have a choice in getting cancer, but I do have a choice in how I'm going to deal with it. And I do. A friend of mine who's a photographer at one of the local TV stations when I was losing weight, and he said, and had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I was still coming to work because it makes me feel useful. And I'm still able to do most everything I always did, unless it requires a whole lot of physical work. Which a government job, how much could there be? But I said, he came up and he said, wow, you're really looking good. He says, how you losing that weight? And I said, pancreatic cancer. And he got the color drained from his face, and he got this horrified look like he committed this terrible faux pas. And I said, don't worry about it.
Knowing you like that.
I did.
It was like, I'm gonna just shock and make him feel like crap, and it'll be a big joke. Yeah.
Some of the interns in the office, they were ribbing me one day, and I said I was going to do this, and they said, I don't think you can do that. And I said, it's the cancer, isn't it? It's like that. And they thought, oh, no, my gosh, we've offended this guy. He's going to tell the senator on us. And
but it's funny because when, like if you have someone in your family that dies, your friends all mean well. And they say, well, I'm sorry, anything I can do. And, but nobody ever really expects you to do anything or whatever, People don't really know what to say, but they say stuff just to say stuff, okay? Okay, you've got pancreatic cancer, all right? What do people say to you? In other words, do they, I'm sorry, anything I can do? Is there, do you get like this sympathy that may or may not be real? What do they say?
Most people are really interested in how I felt. And most people, if they're good friends, and you did this, you said, I mean it. If there's anything I can do, I want to do it. And I did think of it, and I thought it'd be too mean. Tom, could you come over and mow my lawn? But I didn't do that.
Because you know that I'm insincere, and I really didn't mean it at the beginning anyway. So.
But people do that. So many people don't want to talk about, if they have this disease, they don't want to talk about it. And other people don't want to invade their privacy. I know there's a curiosity about it, especially about pancreatic cancer. So they like to ask questions about, just what I'm going through. And I don't mind telling them. Mm-hmm. It's not, having cancer isn't as frightening as it once was. My father died of cancer, prostate cancer. But that was almost 40 years ago. And he, nowadays, prostate cancer, they can detect it in a blood test.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping 20 years from now, pancreatic cancer will be the same way.
I assume people listening to this, some people listening to this right now that are diagnosed with cancer, pancreatic or other kinds, or a loved one of theirs has been diagnosed with cancer. What do you want them to know? What can you tell them to help them through their journey?
That there is light at the end of the tunnel, one way or the other. And either you can come out of it like I did and have some more years, or if your life ends, there's life beyond death. And you shouldn't be afraid either way. This is your situation in life, and you just have to deal with it. And you can't be afraid any day. A little mantra I repeat every day. Don't be angry. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't be a burden to anybody, especially my family. And seek to console, not to be consoled. That's very powerful. Because if you want everybody to come up and say, put their arms around you, that's wrong. Go put your arms around them.
Do you find that maybe you are consoling those around you more than they're consoling you?
Sometimes. I've gotten my wife to be a lot tougher because she's, when they say your better half, she really is. Mm-hmm. Better half. She's
well, it's a low bar.
That's right. She can step right over this one.
Yeah, that's not that tough of a gig, you know.
But she's gotten to be tougher about it, and she knows if I'm not talking, I'm not mad at her. Sometimes it's just easier for me not to talk, and but I'm not feeling sorry for myself or in a shell or anything. She's come to understand it, and I talked about these things. I've talked about what I would like to have at a memorial service. I've written it all down. It was not easy for me to even broach the subject of donating my body to medical science. The new way I did it, and to my daughter, was the hardest one. I went up to her and I said, "Hey, honey," and I said, "You've got a driver's license, don't you?" "Well, of course, Dad, you know that." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Are you an organ donor on that?" She said, "Well, of course." And I said, "You know what you have to do to donate those organs? Well, you have to die." I said, "Exactly. You have to die before you can donate those organs." So in my case, I want to donate my entire body to medical science. And she understood it then.
Do you go to the UNMC where you are being treated?
Yeah.
It's a learning hospital. I mean, it's a teaching hospital. Do they come to you and say, "Yeah, Mr. Fagan, looking at your prognosis here, not looking all that great. You don't mind?" Do they come to you with this, or do you go to them and say, "Hey, look, when I'm done, use me to learn"? I mean, how does that work?
I went online to just check it out, and there's a place on there. There are forms you can fill out. You have witnesses, and you get your family to sign it, and you tell them the operations you've had, and then you send it in, and they send it back to you, and they gave me a little card that said that I forget what they call it. It's a little bit different than you have on your driver's license. But and then any member of your family can still stop it if they want to, but I told them how important it was to me. But it was like the reality settled in.
You did that online. Donate your body to science online.
Yeah, and then they
is there a stopgap to make sure that some smart ass friend of mine isn't saying, "Hey, that's what I want to do for Becca.
We want Becca here."
Yeah.
Well, I had to then send up back the hard copy, mm-hmm. But I did it, and I've looked at many other things that I would want done afterwards, and I've written them down, and my family understands how it is. That my wife and her whole place of work thought it was really funny. I don't particularly like brown shoes, but I have a pair of brown shoes that I would wear with some things that are brown. And I mean, I've never been that color coordinator. For somebody who was on TV, I was one of the worst dressers ever. But I told my wife, I said, if I get the clearance from this latest chemotherapy that I've got more time to live and they've stopped the cancer growth, I said, then I'm going to go out and get a new pair of brown shoes. She laughed, and I said, well, I'm going to go spend money on them before? And she told the people where she worked, and they all thought that was funny. But that's typical me, too. Why go out and buy something that...
Yeah, you don't have to be spending eternity with brown shoes. I don't want to be buried in them or anything. You talked about you wrote your own memorial service.
Yeah, about who I want to be there. And, I don't go to a church regularly, but I have a very good friend who's a minister, Merlin Klaus from Channel 6. I would like him to officiate. I would like Dave Weber to sing. And it'll be a memorial service because my body will be in the Science Hall of Fame. And I would like what was said at Michael Landon's funeral to be said at mine. He said, when you remember me with a smile and laughter, for that's how I will remember you. And then I heard it went on a little further and said, if you remember me with tears, don't remember me at all. That's the way I want to be remembered.
And that is how he is remembered. A man that brought a lot of happiness to a lot of people. And I hope he brought a little bit of insight to you, a little bit of happiness, maybe a little bit of comfort to you in this interview that we have here on TomBecka.com. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please spread the word. Let people know about it. Let them know that every Sunday we've got a new and unique and different podcast here on a web page unlike any other. TomBecka.com.